All right, so
Yes,
sense making.
So sense making is like what it sounds like, making sense of a situation. So when you're faced with a new problem or entering a new situation, or the group that you're leading is encountering something new, you have to understand the situation. They talked about like making a map. So like if you're trying to understand what's going on, you make a map of the terrain so that you can then plot your course through it and be successful. It reminds me of like in physics problems, you understand what the boundary conditions are, right? So if you want to understand what's happening in a new area, you have to understand all the boundary constraints, and then once you understand all of that, then you can figure out the way forward, because every situation is a little different. So.
That is the first time I've ever heard physics brought up with this. I like it.
Yeah.
But no, they're
Bound
like
by Newtonian mechanics.
boundary
or
condition
quantum.
problems. That's right.
Yeah, I love it.
I don't know if you wanted me to say more about that.
No, I mean, can you guys think about how this plays out in the clinical world?
I was gonna put the QI world.
Or the
Basically,
QI world?
Like, that's like you're making your process map.
Yeah.
Finding out who your stakeholders are, and just doing your Gemba walk of what's going on in whatever problem you're trying to define. Or you could say in the clinical world, this is doing your H&P.
Right.
And maybe your assessment, because you do the H&P, you gather the information, and then you sort of form your initial assessment. You haven't intervened yet, but kind of making sense of their current clinical situation.
Absolutely.
But if you don't understand all of the constraints, right? Like if you're trying to optimize everyone getting their flu shot, right? You're going to structure your interaction differently than if there was something else that was a goal, right? So the solution to any problem would be different depending upon what the desired outcomes are and what the desired constraints are, right? So like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure I'm explaining it very well.
But I know, but when you take that one step further and you think about, even a complicated patient, just stopping and being like, what are we aiming for here? What are we going for? And having that chance to talk about that.
Maybe is my goal, like if I'm going into a new patient encounter in an ambulatory setting, is my goal to do their health maintenance or to do their med rec or to like really understand who they are as a person? Is that what you mean by in this setting?
Yes, I think so. And so like they talked about making a map. So if I wanted to get somewhere, right, and I was going to be driving a car, I'd be very interested to know where all the intersections and the roads are. If I was going to be walking, I might be more interested to know where the paths were or where the river was, because those things, I would be encountering those things along the way, depending upon what my situation was. So the map that I would create, even of the exact same problem, would be different depending upon where I'm going. So I might chart out trees and rocks and streams versus roads and ignoring, I don't care what's off in the ditch because I'm going to be, I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe it's like how would I, in clinical setting, how I work something up as an outpatient at the VA versus inpatient at the VA versus if they were at Cleveland Clinic versus if they were with in home care or something like that.
So, we did this delirium intervention, and we did it first in the ICU, and then we did it on the medical floors, and now we're doing it over in the CareStar, which is a outpatient nursing home care unit. And so the premise is really the same, but the way to operationalize it is completely different in all of those situations, because the workflow is different, and the nursing is different, and the types of patients are different, and the core is the same.
Right.
The implementation of it, we basically redesigned.
It's a great example.
Each new setting, and so each time, I didn't know what we were doing, but we were making a map. We met with the stakeholders. We understood what all the constraints were, what all the the assets you had to work with, and then even though your goal was the same, prevent and treat delirium, the actions turned out to be different, and all relied on the different maps that were made for each setting.
That's a great example. All right, relating.
So the relating section talks about 3 key components. 1, inquiring, 2, advocating, and then 3, connecting. And they described inquiring as listening without judgment. I think kind of similar to how we talked about listening to our coachee without judgment, not trying to, put your own motives or ideas sort of on top of their experience, just trying to understand where they're coming from and how they got to whatever conclusion they've made about a situation. And then at the same time, being able to advocate for your position without trying to win. And they talked about the balance between inquiring and advocating being this important balance that you strike and trying to relate to the people around you. And that connecting is a very important part of leadership, and it's built on inquiring and advocating. They say here, time spent building and maintaining connections is the time spent investing in leadership skills. So that they give an example of how, like, historically winning or having your opinion prevail was sort of like the main goal of leadership, but that's probably not the most effective way to lead. So they gave examples, but I felt like it was something that makes a lot of sense, but is maybe challenging to do sometimes in practice. 'Cause you sometimes want to win.
Right.
You sometimes want your point of view or your idea or your interpretation of a situation to be the one that people agree with, you know?
Yep.
Not even if you're leading, just in general.
Right.
So, the sort of the skill of the leader is to understand other people's perspectives and not, you know, okay, I'm only listening so that I can later convince you of my way of thinking.
So that, I mean, some of the best, like, I hate as a hospitalist, like, having to argue with, like, specialists or surgeons, but sometimes I have great conversations when I come in firing. I'm like, okay, this patient needs this, and then I hear a very detailed, like, explanation for why I'm wrong, and I'm like, oh, well, I didn't win, but, like, I learned something, and you and I now have a little bit more mutual respect. So I think that's an example where
Right.
you cannot win, but still, like, everybody comes.
Yeah.
There.
And what does winning mean? Like, even redefining what winning means.
Yeah, winning for the patient.
Right.
In that
Right.
instance,
Right.
you were advocating your, you know, point of view. I think in that example, even though you felt certain that you were right, maybe if you're advocating, I think often when you're advocating, you feel pretty certain that you're right, and you can often be wrong if you're right. You went advocating, and then you sort of on the flip ended up inquiring,
Right.
Because they had a lot to share.
And I think what flips that whole thing on its head is that we often go in, like you said, advocating, then inquiring, and almost last connecting. And you almost wonder if you start with connecting and then inquiring, you may not even need to advocate. It may be done for you, or then you have everything you need to know to be able to.
Yeah, this goes back to crucial conversations.
Yeah.
So it's the pool of shared knowledge, or
Yeah.
like really that's what you're getting at. You didn't, in this case, you maybe didn't have all the information that you needed. You were making what you thought was the best decision with the information you had, but you didn't have all the information. And this idea that everybody has something to, I know it sounds so soft, but everybody has something to add to the pool of meaning. That's what the inquiring does, and it allows you to connect. And then once you all are sharing, hopefully, the same pool of meaning, then you can both advocate for what's best for the patient. Because I think if you go back to, I want to win,
Yeah.
if that's your goal, then yeah, you're not going to connect with people. You might win,
You
but
probably
you won't
won't win.
connect
Yeah.
with people. And in the long run,
You
you know,
don't
you
win
can
in the
think
long
you
run.
can think of people that maybe we work with that win a
Maybe.
lot that nobody wants to work with.
Right.
And is that better off for the patient in the long run? I don't think so. Or
No.
for whatever you're working on.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
we've been
okay,
talking about
so-
crucial conversations a lot, so I love that book.
So relating is definitely, you got, that one's not hard. Well, it is hard, but it's not hard to grasp. And then how about visioning?
So visioning, I think, is hard both to grasp and to do. But so the idea of visioning, I think, is simple. It's creating that vision, like that compelling. I like to say creating compelling images of the future. So sense making charts that map of what is, and visioning says what can this map be. So if we all did this one thing, like what could our goal be? What could it look like? And so it's both that the article said it was both a dynamic and a collaborative process, where we kind of are, as opposed to a top-down, like this is my vision and you will all do it. It's more of this articulation of what all the members of the organization can create together, and then getting feedback from the members, like if they think that's good or not. They wrote, if people aren't getting your vision, don't just turn up the volume, like construct a shared vision. And I think that was one of the things I took most away from this is, okay, so you're the leader, you're setting the vision, and your teammates just aren't getting it. So as opposed to knocking it through their heads, just figure out how to construct a shared vision. And then I liked the concept that there's this table where it's 5 steps to how to create a vision. Number 4, I liked. It said, don't worry if you don't know how to accomplish the vision. So you've got this end in sight. You have no idea how to get there, but people on your team may actually be able to know the answer or come up together a process for how.
Yeah, shared experiences, or And I think what's so important for residents too, like we could probably all think in our jobs, like when we get a chance to do this, but I think residents sometimes are like, I don't get to vision, I just, show up and I round. But like visioning could be, how do we get this person home? Visioning could be like, how do we get their meds paid for? Whatever it may be. And so like really showing them all the different ways that they do get to vision.
Well, especially the PGY too, you have a little more opportunity to hesitate. Like they're always
They can vision a little
they're always trying to
more.
figure out what a senior resident can do. It's like, well, this is one thing you can do. You can help the interns figure out where they need to go and lead them to.
Interns visioning, how do I get home tonight?
Right.
Exactly.
How do I eat today? And so this one segues nicely, I think, right into inventing.
So the simplest way that I could sum up inventing is creative implementation. So take that vision and make it work where you are, and try to reimagine the way that things can be done, because if you just go business as usual, then you will get the same results you were getting before. So if you have that good sense of the way your environment works, and you've made the appropriate relationships, and everybody has come up with sort of this shared vision, then hopefully with your global understanding now, you basically have enough information to redesign the way things are done to get different results.
I love it. And it's funny that you started with creative implementation. I've read this article about 50 times, and just the last time I read it, that jumped out at me for really the first time.
Yeah. I think we do somehow we think of innovation and implementation as 2 different things, and I guess they are in some respect, but you sort of, if you marry them together, I think that it'll be more effective. Because I think Frank's example was really good. Like you cannot force the same intervention in different settings over and over. And if you understand that and you work with the group to come up with something that works for them, then it's going to be more effective. So, and that goes back to if they have this vision of how am I going to get this patient home or whatever, it's different for every patient. It's different at every institution you work at. It's different depending on what type of insurance they have, or what level of service connection they have. And so a resident can't do that by themselves.
No.
They have to work with their social worker and their nurses and everything. So.
Yeah, and I think that highlights the importance of this so much. And when they do, how frustrating that can be.
Yeah.
So basically, for each one of these capabilities, we have a self-assessment that walks you through specific questions, or not specific questions, but phrases within each capability that sort of show that capability in action. And you, similar to the Strengths Finder, you rate yourself on a 1 through 5. Yes, this really isn't like no, this really isn't like me, or yes, this is totally like me. And then at the end of that, and so you basically do the yes, this is not like me, or no, this isn't like me, 5, this is like me all the time. And then you give yourself a rating. And the idea with this self-assessment is that it's less about like, this is what I'm strong in, this is what I'm weak in, and more of like, what's jumping off the page at you? What's really compelling for you to talk about? What would be helpful for us to focus on between now and the next time I see you? So what I think we should do, and actually this is a great way to, so sometimes I forget to print it out before the meetings, and this is actually what I'll do is I'll just bring it up my phone and just say like, all right, so read these and like what's jumping, because the idea with this is it's less about what number are you getting, and it's more about like what's really speaking to you, like what is something that would be really helpful for you to focus on. Now it's important as they do this to have a clinical scenario in their minds. And similarly for you guys, like whether you think about QI or this dementia project or delirium project, or you're thinking about clinic or you know, your mentoring roles, whatever you may be thinking about, have something in your head as you're looking at it. And what I'd say is, like, look through the themes and just pick something that's really jumping off the page at you to talk about. And then, and as the coach, you can, really the way the dialogue goes as the coach is like, tell me what's jumping off the page at you. What would be most helpful for us to talk about today? And here, you guys can use my phone.
Okay.
So what's really jumping off the page at you? What would be most helpful for us to talk about today? And then again, practice your listening, your reflecting, your questions. So why don't we say, so it'll be a little off the cuff, but this is good to practice like this. It means you'll be ready when the time comes.
It's all good.
So for the coachee, have the phone in your hand and kind of look through and just see like which of these things is really jumping out at you as something you'd want to talk about. And as the coach just kind of work through. Why don't we say we'll do like 5 minutes each. We'll go just like a minute over. As the coachee, look through and see what's really jumping off the page at you of like what would be, or the screen, what would be useful for you guys to talk about. And then as the coach, you're just, you know, same thing, like these listening, reflecting, asking questions. You might say like, all right, so that's something that's interesting to you. This is where it's really helpful not to ask the clarifying questions and think about like, how might this look if this were really going well? What might you be interested in piloting or trying?